In this video, we'll be discussing if-then statements. Now, before we dive into if-then statements, we need to cover what's called the conditional. The conditional expresses would. Okay, so you'll see with the examples, I would speak, you would eat, he, she, or you would dance, we would go, you all or they would sleep. So the endings for the conditional are ia, ias, ia, íamos, and ian. Now the cool thing about the conditional is that you just tack it on or add it to the verb. You don't have to take off the AR like we normally do. So you'll notice we have hablar. We just add ia to the end, and if I say yo hablaría, it expresses I would speak. If we were to take the verb comer, then we would add ias for tú, and by saying tú comerías, it expresses you would eat. Okay, so that's the idea. There are some irregulars to watch out for, and they're listed here, so memorize those. Decir, we have diría, haría for hacer, podría, pondría, habría, querría, sabría, saldría, tendría, and vendría. So watch out for those irregulars. And again, the conditional is used to express would. You can also use this particular ending in conjunction with the verb haber. Again, haber means have. So if you want to say would have, then yo habría, I would have. Okay. So an example with these, we have these examples up here using would. So yo hablaría, tú comerías, él bailaría, nosotros iríamos, ustedes dormirían. An example with haber, we could say yo habría venido, I would have come. Okay. So remember with haber, you do want to use the ed ending or the past participle form of another verb, whichever verb haber is helping. So ido or hado. Alright, so that's the conditional. Now let's take a look at the if-then statements. See if I can jump down there. Alright, so if-then statements. Now, if-then statements are used to express hypothetical ideas. So if I had money, then I would buy the car of my dreams. So with if-then statements that express hypothetical ideas, there are two parts. There's the if portion and the then portion of the statement. So divide it up, because in the if portion of the statement we will use one particular conjugation, and in the then statement we'll use a different conjugation for the verb in that portion. For the if portion, we use the past subjunctive or the past perfect subjunctive. Okay, so quick recall on how to form the past subjunctive. Okay, so you notice to form the past subjunctive, again, this is in our if portion of the statement, take the eos ending for the preterite of the verb. So the eos ending for hablar in the preterite is hablaron, or comieron, or dijeron. Take off the on, so you end up with hablar, comer, dijer, etc. And then just add the following endings for the given pronouns. Okay, so you end up with hablara, hablaras, hablara, habláramos, hablaran. If you follow this pattern, there will not be any irregulars. Okay, so that's kind of a recap on how to form the past subjunctive, so jot that down if you have it. If you don't have it in your notes, go ahead and jot that down. So going back to the if-then statements. Okay. So for the if portion, we use the past subjunctive or the past perfect subjunctive. The majority of those end in ara or iera. Now, for the then portion of the statement, we use the conditional. That was the one we just talked about at the beginning of the video, where we just add ia, ias, ia, íamos, or ian to the end of the verb. So either the conditional or the conditional perfect of the conjugation. So we're going to look at 6 examples down here. The first 3 do not use the verb haber, and the last 3 do use the verb haber. Alright, so let's take a look at the first example. If I had time. So here we have our if statement. Okay. See if I can get this. There we go. Or not. Okay. Si yo tuviera tiempo. So following that pattern, we come up with that we discussed on how to form the past subjunctive. So taking the eos form of the preterite, dropping the on, giving it one of those endings, we end up with tuviera. So if I had time, si yo tuviera tiempo, then we're going to use the conditional in the then statement. Yo iría contigo. Si yo tuviera tiempo, yo iría contigo. Okay? Take a look at number 3. If I want, this is supposed to say if down here. If I wanted to do it, I could. Notice that the word then isn't actually used here. In English, we can use the word then. In Spanish, again, it's kind of optional, but basically in the portion of the sentence where we would use then, or where we could use then, is where we would use the conditional here. So if I wanted to do it, then I could. Si yo quisiera hacerlo, so we took quisieron, the ellos form of the preterite for the verb querer, quisieron, we dropped our on, and then gave it the correct ending, and in this case it's for yo. So, si yo quisiera hacerlo, yo podría. So we're using the verb poder, and it is irregular in the conditional, so yo podría. Okay. Now the if portion of the statement doesn't always have to come at the beginning. For example, notice number 2. If I wasn't so nervous, then I would talk to her. So we can actually start this off with the then portion of the statement. I would talk to her if I wasn't so nervous. Okay? So since this is the then portion of the statement, we want to use the conditional. Yo hablaría con ella, and then we have our if statement. Si yo no estuviera tan nervioso. Okay? So that is, those are some examples of if-then statements. Now with 4, 5, and 6, we've got some examples with if-then statements using the helping verb haber. Okay? So if she had read, then she would have learned. Okay? So si ella hubiera leído, ella habría aprendido. So notice in the if statement, we're using the past subjunctive, and in the then statement, we're using the conditional. Okay. Number 5, actually let's jump down to number 6. Number 6, we have our if portion. If you had practiced. Okay. So notice the word had. So we want to use the past subjunctive. Si hubieras practicado, habrías ganado. Again, if portion of the statement, past subjunctive. In the then portion of the statement, we're using the conditional. For number 5, We're switching it up a little bit. We're putting the then statement first. So you would have finished if you had started. Okay. So for the then statement, we have our conditional. Tú habrías terminado. Then our if portion. Si hubieras empezado. An easy way to remember this is anytime you use the word if, try and remember that you're going to be using the ending iera or ara. So, si hubieras empezado, habrías terminado. Okay? So those are if-then statements. So they're a little complicated. Study those, practice them. There will be some opportunity to practice in your homework and also in class. Okay? So take some time on this one, study it and practice it a lot. And we'll see you in class.